Big recruiting weekend in Tuscaloosa. We talked about Greedy Vance getting an offer from the Crimson Tide yesterday, but let's talk about the defense in general. Alabama didn't look great in the first half of that 8A game, but they really do look great as far as talent on that defensive line. We're going to talk about that. JuJu Marks made his visit to Tuscaloosa, and he was super impressed. Some other targets that Alabama has offered and that the Crimson Tide have a really good chance of landing. We're going to talk about all that right here on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. Make sure that you guys like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. That's a great way of saying Roll Tide. And let's get this party started with your Saturday invitation. Roll Tide, everybody. What do you say? Great to talk to you here on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. And let's jump into this right off the bat. Visits going on right now as Alabama tries to crack that transfer portal. But a four-star offensive lineman out of Overland Park, Kansas, made his visit to Tuscaloosa, and JuJu Marks was like absolutely blown away, impressed with Tuscaloosa. And why wouldn't he be? Alabama's defense under Kane Womack is going to be high-flying. It's going to be a little bit different, but I think that these guys are going to enjoy playing in Tuscaloosa, and he's certainly one of those guys. And the first of two that we're going to talk about from Overland Park, Kansas, which has become a hotbed of talent. But when you look at Alabama and you look at the defense and what's coming back, we know we lost a lot of guys from the secondary in the transfer portal, right? Will Greedy Vance eventually come to Tuscaloosa? I have a feeling he will, but he's got some other visits out there. He's a Florida State transfer. Is Alabama looking in another direction? That window, which opened up on Tuesday officially, is 15 days, right? So you got to get it figured out in 15 days. You know that Kalen DeBoer has said, I want guys that fit our culture, and I want players who are going to come in and fill a gap, that can come in and make a difference. Defensive line is not one of those areas, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But defensive backfield, yeah. I mean, a guy like Vance could come in and play immediately. As we talk, though, about the defense, how about Alabama's defensive line? And I've debated this with people off of the show, and it's like, what do you think is Bama's strength coming into this season, right? I mean, it's definitely not defensive back. I think offensive line, it has a little bit of a depth issue that they're going to try to fix, but I think it's really a strong unit. We talked about the running back group being one that you could count on. Is like, hey, what, the running backs are good. You got a lot of talent there as well. Even the fourth string guys are really good, fifth string, so you got a lot of talent, but Justice Haynes, Jam Miller, you're talking about the top of that, Richard Young, who we saw at the 8A game, those guys are good. Okay, so if you're going to beat that group, you better be good. And I feel like it might be Alabama's defensive line, how stout they are. Think about this. LT Overton, Keelan Keeley is a former 5-star. Jamarian Latham's a guy that played. We heard Tim Smith's name a lot last year. Tim Keenan. Jaheim Otis, who was just such a force. Those guys are all back, right? So you're talking about that defensive line. The linebacker group is really, really strong as well. And I feel like this could be a strength for Alabama. Overton's the guy that transferred in from Texas A&M. And then you add him with, all of these other guys that are returning. This is a group that could really give Alabama an edge up front, and you feel like maybe you add to this group. I talked about it the other day. Like, I'm not saying that you couldn't find someone else to help rush the passer. We saw that with Michigan last year, where it's just wave after wave of guys that are trying to run down your quarterback. But this is an area we haven't really talked about a lot on this channel, that when you start to look at it, you're like, man, this is really a good area. Like, this is a spot where you feel like Alabama has a ton of depth. So think about that when you start talking about guys like like Keeley, like Otis. And some of you have been in the comment section like, Mick, what about this guy? What about that guy? Should we expect a transfer? Man, Keeley, this is going to be a defense that I think is a little bit better for him than what Alabama ran. I got a feeling that he's going to have a monster season. And then Otis has been someone to keep an eye on since he started playing at Alabama, but he's actually going to have more experience this year. So I feel really good about that. Now, the Crimson Tide are constantly trying to add to their defense. And doing so, you're talking about going after some of the top, high school players in the country. How about Dawson Merritt? Right back to Overland Park, Kansas. Has the Final Four set for this linebacker, and it's Bama, Missouri, Nebraska, and Oklahoma. Made his second visit to Tuscaloosa, and I mean, the fact that he's coming back again tells you that he's serious about the Crimson Tide. And you love what Womack is doing with the defense. You have to appreciate DeBoer and the way that he's connecting with these guys. So Merritt is someone to keep an eye on. And when you look at that list, Alabama, obviously for a guy that's from, Kansas, right there near Missouri, you can make it an easy fit. I feel like this group, Missouri's probably, would be, to me, if I was him, probably the weakest one. Nebraska, I wouldn't go there, but it would be between Alabama and Oklahoma. And, we'll see how that shakes out. And then another guy I absolutely love, Dijon Lee, back in Tuscaloosa again this weekend. Mission Viejo, California. That's a long trip, but Alabama has this connection with the state of California and some of their top prospects. So Lee is another one of those guys on that list. Alabama continues to kind of net these guys, bring them in, and he's been a target for them. And he's a guy that is really trying to choose between Alabama and Georgia. This is the type of battle that you want to win if you're Alabama, because Georgia, not only did you beat them last year in the SEC championship game, not only have they tried to copy and emulate everything that you do, they've got Kirby still, right? And obviously Nick Saban retired. But at the same time, when you talk about going out there and winning these battles, you got to win some of these battles just to let everybody know we're going to take care of you on the football field, but we're going to continue to battle for the top talent in the country. And I almost feel like and I didn't know this when it happened. I was wondering, what was life going to be like when Nick Saban retired? And I wondered, how that would affect recruiting. How would that affect Alabama football? What would the future look like? And the thing that I'm realizing is that Nick Saban, when he was there, was kind of like the last of that dying breed of football coach. And that the new breed is, just a little bit more player friendly. Not to say Nick Saban wasn't a guy who loved the players, but he was very hard on the guys, kind of pushed hard and expected a lot. So does Kalen DeBoer. But Kalen DeBoer just has a different tone. I think it's going to match this generation of player. And I feel like that he's going to be able to compete with Kirby and with everyone else. Now, we're going to have some growing pains. That it's this first year running through the SEC. But I got a text today from someone that I'm friends with. What do you think? Seriously. I really think seriously that Kalen DeBoer is a great hire. I don't know what's going to happen this year, but I think in the long run, Alabama could not have done any better, right? I just don't. And I think that the way that he does things, the way that he works with the media, the connection that he's making with players and their families, and this just kind of a more friendly tone, I think it's going to work long-term for Alabama. Still love Nick Saban, don't get me wrong, but the future looks really bright with Kalen DeBoer. And I think that Dijon Lee is a guy that Alabama could easily get and that would make a big difference for the Crimson Tide moving forward. So that's where we are right now. I want to remind you guys of something. Use the promo code Bama Tailgate for 15% off 4th and 31 at newlifeart.com. I'm about to change that promo code. So if you're going to use it, go ahead and cash in on it now. But here in the next couple weeks, we're going to change that up and do some different stuff. So if you've already used it and you've already got 4th and 31, know that there's something else coming. And if you don't, make sure that you take advantage of it now. And don't ever discount how beautiful it was ripping the heart out of Auburn on that play. Don't ever underestimate that. That's our version of the kick six. So I still love that. And I think that actually, like, New Life Art did an amazing job of capturing that moment. I really do. I think it's one of the greatest prints that Daniel Moore has done. And I mean, you're talking about a Hall of Fame artist. So check that out and take advantage of that code. Guys, we will talk to you tomorrow. Thank you for hanging out with us here on the Bama Tailgate YouTube channel. Have a great Saturday. A little bit shorter show today, but look, I know you got a lot of things on your schedule, but I will tell you this, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, Roll Tide.